9 o'clock on the East Coast. Here on PJNet Live, we have David Winters standing by in our green room. We have a bumper rolling. We have the titles rolling. We have a background. We have a chat room full of happy people. We will switch to Studio 6 in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Well, good evening. It's 9 o'clock or so here on the East Coast. Welcome to PJNet Live, where everybody goes to, well, have a good time and encourage one another and be encouraged. I see that the chat room is populating with people anxious to see what in the heck we have cooked up for the first half hour. We have a second half hour lineup ready for you. And I am going to introduce you for the very first time here on PJNet Live, a guy that is either crazy or eccentric. I'm not sure which. David Winters. David, is it crazy or eccentric that best describes you?
Yes.
Do you know the difference?
No.
Annual income, sir. You are adorned behind you by the title to your book, which we can kind of get into the screen, which is actually what kind of drew me to kind of approach you about appearing. Taking God to Work. And I want to hear the story behind this book. I want to hear about the book. Is that it? Well, the one behind you, is that the large print version for us old folks?
Yes.
So many times I hear people say that their witness, their testimony, is just in their day to day going to work and such. And when I hear that, I don't really know anybody's heart, but I just kind of don't buy it. What's your take?
Well, I think most people start out their career, at least, and I know I did, as a Christian, thinking that church is on Sunday, and I learn certain principles, I live by certain principles, but I go to work and I don't really mix my Christian faith with my work. And most people, we don't swear or chew or hang around with girls who do, but we, basically think people are going to, by osmosis, realize we're Christians. However, also like me, I think a lot of people have not done an exhaustive study of what God says about work, about the many, and we found literally hundreds of scriptures in the Bible, and we used over 100 of them in the book about work. And so they don't really have a full understanding of God's purpose for creating work and what they could be if they really gave their whole heart and life over to God within their work. And so that's a revelation. And it took me years of working. I had a 34-year career with the federal government. And
I work for the federal government too.
Oh, very good. What did you do?
Taxpayer.
Very good. We appreciate it. My aunt used to, every time I got another day off, she would say, like, well, I can see that coming out of my check today. Basically, by thinking this over and praying this over, and then God kind of whispering to my pastor about the same time he whispered to me about doing a book on work, I realized that, I'd come to an epiphany over the course of my career. And there were some big moments and some big catalysts for that within the 34 years, of course. But I wanted to pass that on to other people, so hopefully they wouldn't be as dumb as me and let 15 or 20 years go by without really operating within God's plan for work while they're there every day.
Well, I know we don't want to say too much about what's inside the book because you probably would like to sell the book. But can you tell us, you used 100 scriptures. Can you give me kind of a sampling so that I can get the overall tone of the scriptural context that you're operating from?
Yeah, well, there's 275 pages, so I'm not worried about telling you too much in a half an hour. I wish it were that easy. I do a 70-minute presentation at these Iron Sharpens Iron conferences for men, and I feel like I just barely got a chance to tell them anything before I sat down. Well, it starts out in the book of Genesis where God creates work before the fall. And a lot of people don't think that over, but he actually asked Adam and Eve to dress the garden before they had any difficulty with sin or anything else. So work is a great thing. God created it for us to enjoy, for us to really have some choice about what it is we put our hand to and do. But also, he did it for our good. We need work. And whether we're in a classic job, whether we're at home taking care of things for a while, in our what would normally be considered in the West our working years, or whether we're retired and getting a pension, God expects us still to be working for Him, for others in the world, and to be putting our hand to what we do. And that's one of those scriptures that whatever you do, do it as unto the Lord. And that was sort of in my mind before I wrote this book, but it was really driven home to me by some of the examples of people that came forward after either having read the book or listened to the teachings at our church. We did this as a growth series at church first. And, one lady was just a bagger at a cashier at a grocery store. And she had done the job for many years, and she was, just going through the motions. And she had a lady who was handicapped come, rolling up on a scooter thing to her conveyor belt. And she said to herself, wow, I have to bag all these groceries. This woman's of course not going to help at all, but she's also, probably going to be demanding, and I really don't want to do it. And she said, Lord, just help me to have strength to try to do this. And she heard that little voice inside of us that we all hear that are Christians from the Lord now and then. And it said, would you do it for me? Would you bag her groceries for me? And she said, why, sure, Lord, I wouldn't mind doing it for you. And in that instant, her whole job changed. She realized that she wasn't just doing this to make money or to fulfill her kind of obligations to work until she was 65 and could get a little pension or something. She was doing it because God put her there to help other people and love other people through her job. And that kind of transformation in your heart goes so much further than just hearing scriptures out loud, I think.
Well, David, you've given me a lot of things to think about, and I don't want to talk too much because I want to hear you. But that verse you mentioned, "Work as unto the Lord," that's a key verse in my life, because to me as a coach, that's a call to excellence, but it's more than that. In our work, we need to be ethical and hardworking. We don't need to be, standing around not being productive. I know of an incident at my workplace where an employee just went out to a company vehicle. It was cold. He cranked the vehicle up and turned the heater on and left a message on my desk: "Call me if you need me." Not exactly a good. That kind of gets at work ethic, And I did not handle that well, but he didn't do the right thing. So, does your book have anything to say about work ethics?
Well, it certainly does. I mean, right now on Amazon, we've been running a special promotion for 5 days. That's the last day of it, and we're up to the second or third best giveaway book on Amazon in business ethics. And the whole point of ethics really comes down to the golden rule. Jesus explained it to us, and that's just that we do unto others as we'd like them to do unto us. And many people sort of rationalize that their employer is a big multinational corporation or the federal government or something really large. So if I steal a little time here, or if I play on the internet a little there, who's really getting hurt? I mean, they don't care really. And it's true that we aren't machines and we can't just work 100 miles an hour every day, but most of us get paid or got paid in our full-time career pretty well. And so we really want to put our best effort in because we're working for the Lord. We're not really looking for a reward from the people here. We're looking for that eternal reward that's going to just be his adoration and appreciation for our efforts. He loves us unconditionally for just who we are. But at some point, it says he's going to judge our works, and everyone's works are going to come into review. And we want that to be a positive, happy experience. And one of the big key scriptures in the book, and I reread it recently in Matthew with our church reading through Matthew, but it has to do with the fact that there are people who are least among us, and if we do it for them, we're doing it for the Lord, and we're loving them for Him and on His behalf. And when He sees us on Judgment Day, He's going to say, thanks for giving me that drink of water. Thanks for doing that contract to help me. And we'll say, like, Lord, I don't remember any contracts that you were involved in. And He's going to say, yeah, but when you did it for that person that couldn't do it for themselves, then you did it for me.
Well, I would argue that God is in many contracts because there is abstention of liability based on acts of God. But I had another incident at my workplace. Employees would habitually clock in and then immediately go to the bathroom. And I called that into question, and one of them said, the boss makes $1, I make a dime. That's why I go potty on company time.
Oh, gosh.
While you recover from that, sabbaticalofthemind.net. Tell us.
Well, I was one of those people that ran around the Washington rat race 100 miles an hour. I, at some point, made an ill-fated decision that I was bored with my 20-year career as a civilian with the Navy, and I was kind of a big shot in a certain small area of policy in the Department of Defense. And so I'd conduct meetings in the Pentagon and, feel like a big shot probably, and just had a great career with them. But I thought, I want to really try something new and different. So I went over to Department of Homeland Security. And this was in not the very earliest days, but before the 5-year mark. And it was chaos. I mean, there were just not enough people. There was a boatload of money because everybody wanted to legislate money for Homeland Security, because what could be more important than protecting the homeland, of course. So that turned out to be one of the most stressful environments I'd ever been exposed to. And I was thrown into a situation where other people thought they would be promoted, and I got the division director job. So they weren't, hoping I would succeed. And then there was the organization I was working with. There were some very unhappy people in the accounting comptroller area who didn't want procurement to have any authority or be able to call any shots about anything, even the stuff we knew about and they didn't. And so then I had a very off-the-wall CEO, I would call him, of the organization there at the time. And I'd worked with him before, which is why they specifically hired me for that job, is because I knew I could kind of keep him at least within a reasonable box of the law from what he liked to try to do. And he was best friends with Trent Lott, and he'd go to you're in Florida, he'd go to the University of Florida versus Miami football game and be up in the box. And he would have them announce that the Navy gave so much money to both schools, and act like he personally had given it to them. So he was a character and a half. But from all the things that happened there, I started having panic attacks. And I went to one meeting and I started to melt down about it. And, I was with the IGs, the inspector generals that review everything, and I wasn't in any trouble. I was helping to give them information about how normally business would go, and they were deciding if something went wrong in one deal. But I thought I was having a heart attack. I didn't know what it was. And I went to the doctor and he said, well, you had a panic attack. And, he took all those, EKGs and all that. And he said, you weren't having any kind of heart thing. And so I started praying about it. And I felt like God told me, you need to get away with me and you need to really spend quality time with me. And eventually I came to realize that meant to quit my job. So I stayed until the end of the highly stressful fiscal year. And then I just quit, which nobody quits their government job at the point in my career I was. But I spent 5 months with the Lord, and I read great books like Fearless was one of them, just Max Lucado, Jensen Franklin, all these different people from different theological perspectives that talked about either fear or getting over anxiety and all that. And God showed me that I didn't need to fear anything because I knew that death was not going to be the final answer for me. I was going on to heaven. And, he gave me visions about what it would be like to be in the rapture. I was kind of worried about that. There was all kinds of things that he showed me in that time I was with him. So I thought, I'm going to write a book about this. But I couldn't do it while I was still working. So I ended up going back, finishing my career. Strangely, they hired me back at Homeland Security, and I finished out for 5 more years. And then I retired and became a full-time Christian writer and speaker. And the first book I wrote was Sabbatical of the Mind, The Journey from Anxiety to Peace. And so I decided to name my website after that because I hope that my whole writing essence and career is wrapped up in getting everyone to take a sabbatical. Sabbatical, of course, means rest. It's where we get the word Sabbath. To rest in the Lord because of something I passed on from him. It's not like I've got great ideas and you really need to do what I suggest to do, but God has great ideas. And if we'll stop and listen to what he's saying, then we can have a whole better higher plane to live on. And I really did find that for myself. And so I wrote down these ideas, some things I learned about anxiety. One of my problems was partially physical. I was taking a new diabetes drug, and that was totally making me much more anxious than I'd ever been in my life. And so I learned from, just taking time to have a complete physical, let my, doctor who I usually ran in, my car was on 2 wheels as I got into his parking lot. I'd run in and let him take my blood pressure, and it was like way too high. And then he'd give me more pills, and I'd run out. And this time I just sat down and I said, something is wrong with me, and I'm having all this anxiety problems. And you saw me in the emergency room, I'm a mess. And so he took time to really talk with me. And he said, well, the last medication we added was this diabetes drug, and why don't we try something different? And boy, that was 50% of the problem at least, and maybe more, when I just changed to a different drug. And so I just encourage everybody, if you have anxiety problems, if you have fear problems, not just go to the Lord and pray, which is good, but there are people out there with a lot of wisdom, and ask him to lead your journey to get out of anxiety, out of fear, and into faith. And and that's a favorite verse of mine. The Lord hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. And we can make it. We can make it somehow.
David, I wish we had more time. You have a new book but just mention the title because we're going to have to bolt to make room for our next guest. Oh, you just happen to have a copy.
I just happen to have one. I don't know
All
if
right,
you can
hold
see
it
it.
over. Put your nose to the back, the center back of the book. There we go. Exercise
Oh,
your
better.
faith, defeating the lies men believe. Oh, so in 1 minute, first of all, apologize for that picture on the front. It is not you.
That picture on the front is a good friend of mine who owns a gym. The book is examining 31 lies that men believe. From It's All About Sex is the very first one I deal with because I know people want me to get that out of the way and move on. Uh, I really violate the guy code because I know a lot of women will read this book too. And I tell some of our secrets, like, for example, there's a question women should never ask men, and that's in there. There's just a look at biblical truth that answers these different lies. And the culture is telling us crazy things now about masculinity, about the genders, all kinds of just really dumb lies. And if we take a minute or two and get grounded in what God has to say about these things, it's a humorous book. I tell a lot of, I think, funny stories that have happened to me, but have happened to other people too. And then a lot of examples of very serious stuff that's happened to me and happened to other people. So I hope you'll take time to look at it and to get it. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. All my books are out there, and I'm praying God will use it to bring a lot more understanding and help guys to develop strong mental, physical, and spiritual health.
David, gosh, we ran out of time. That's good. You should have consulted me on things that, I know a lot of. Anyway, we'll talk off the air. I bet it's in the book. Here's a hint, folks. Why do gentlemen open the door for ladies? Do you address that?
No, I don't.
Okay, well then we need to talk. Okay. Anyway,
There's some topics too hot, even for one of my books.
there you go. David, thanks for bailing us out tonight. We did not have a 9 o'clock guest, and you have filled the slate and exceeded every expectation. The very best of you to you, sir. Thank you for all that you've shared tonight, and Godspeed in your journey ahead.
Likewise, Mark. Take care, and thanks for having me.
I'm glad to do it, David. David Winters, folks, right here on PJ Net Life. What? That was pretty good. What do you think? Okay, listen. Many of you may have noticed by her absence, Barbara is not in our chat room tonight. Let me explain. She sent me a message earlier that she has taken her husband back to the ER to check for pneumonia, something like that. She didn't seem to be in panic. She thought maybe she would be back by now. But please keep Barbara and her husband Frank in your prayers. Keep me in your prayers because I've got to tear all this down and build it all back because we've got another guest coming up in just a few moments. Ashley Jones will be here tonight in place of Michelle Medlock Adams. I will leave you with 2 questions and a challenge. Number 1, what is the boldest thing you've ever done for Christ? Number 2, when was that? The challenge, number 3, or 2A, never be satisfied with either answer.